want to share with you some really simple tools and techniques that really do reduce your workload as a GM. I'm not going to tell you to rely on improv skills. We're not all professional actors, and if you're not confident in your improv ability, then that might present a bit of a hurdle. I'm not going to tell you to prep more efficiently or be a better GM. That just increases the pressure. And I'm not going to tell you to switch to a new game. Regulars here will know there are loads of games you can play that don't rely on prep, and I play them all the time. But I'm going to assume you tend to play traditional games that do put a bit of work on your shoulders. As a rule of thumb, if your game is a letter-sized hardback with a section on spells, it probably expects you to do some extra work. But as another rule of thumb, most people tend to play this sort of thing. I used to exclusively, and I used to burn out every few months. But since delving into the world of indie and solo games, I don't feel that pressure anymore. And if what I learned helped me, maybe it can help others. So a couple of months ago, I plopped down a pile of those relatively traditional games and asked my partner to choose one. She picked Daggerheart, and so in the safe environment of just the two of us, I ran an adventure testing out various zero prep techniques each session. And this is what I found. No efficiency, no you're doing it wrong, just some real methods I've used to reduce the workload. Daggerheart actually has some useful tools for planning sessions and campaigns, and it has some absolutely lovely campaign frames in the style of Wildsea's Reaches to give a bit of scaffolding to your world. But all that involves reading and prep, so we won't be using any of it. Instead, we built the setting collaboratively during session 0. There's various ways to do this, and Daggerheart actually suggests going around the table adding details to a map, but instead we used the step-by-step process in Fabula Ultima. Step 1, decide on the shape of the world. We went for a tidally locked binary planet system. Some random tables in my Ironsworn Starforge book told us that the other planet had a continent-sized ocean of lava illuminating the night sky in red. Step 2, grab a map sheet. Daggerheart has blank maps, so we used one of those. Step 3, what is the role of magic and technology? We wanted a bright Magitech feel, like Guild Wars 2 or Arcane, and figured that magic would come in the form of gadgets and devices powered by meteorite fragments. Step 4, create the major kingdoms and nations of your world. We focused on one city, using some tables to help us flesh it out. A coastal city built around a gigantic library and governed by bureaucratic librarians. There's a guild branch of monster hunters there who use a secret sign language and cool gadgets. Step 5, historical events. For this, we decided people used to travel between planets, but something made one of them uninhabitable, and now they're confined to one world. Step 6, mysteries. Well, what happened to the other planet? Do meteorites come from there? Could people travel there again? And step 7, threats. Monster activity occasionally spikes in certain areas. The librarians suspect they somehow come from the other planet, and by observing the flows of lava, they predict a huge surge of monster activity in the very near future. So, 30 minutes of chatting, and we've got a pretty fun concept with lots of adventure opportunities. This is a session 0, and by letting my player take the creative burden off my shoulders, it turns prep into play. Instead of having to build the world yourself beforehand, or read a big campaign setting or adventure module, you can collaboratively work together on that stuff, letting your players populate some of the details of the world and story. And that sets up expectations for later sessions, so that instead of prepping a town, you can ask each player what they think is here. It's really difficult to give up control if you're used to more trad games, but the end result is that players will do a lot of the heavy lifting for you without even realizing. If they know it's okay for them to add details, they'll be volunteering stuff later, like, oh, maybe I spot a hidden path between those buildings. Stuff that you didn't prep, but would have been great to include if you did. Before really getting into the tabletop scene, I used to run community events in MMOs. Sometimes I'd have 5 minutes to prepare a role-playing event, and I had to learn fast what the bare minimum is that you need. It turns out the bare minimum is something to do and a place to do it in. Whenever I prep for a tabletop game, I have that in the back of my mind. Just sticking to location and activity can really help you focus on what's actually needed for a session and reduce the prep time. But that's technically still prep, and this video is about zero prep. So how do we turn that low prep idea into a zero prep idea? Well, we need a method to come up with a location and activity in any game without prep and without improv. Well, that's actually quite easy. Let me introduce you to Spark tables. This is going to be an important concept moving forward, so let's pause for a moment to clearly state what I mean. A Spark table is a kind of random table, but it doesn't tell you what happens or what you find. Instead, it gives you just enough information to make a quick decision and inspire your own creativity in any situation. Often they work by rolling on tables to build a sentence or phrase, and word association leads you to a meaning. I do tend to have my Ironsworn Starforge books on hand for their random tables and Spark tables, but really you don't need loads of extra books to do this sort of thing. We don't need to completely randomize the game. That's not really a good way to generate a story. Instead, we want quick and easy ways of helping you make decisions on the spot. So rather than telling you about all these books full of tools and tables, I'm going to show you a bookmark. This is something I made myself. The Spark table involves rolling 4d6s to generate a verb, adjective, and noun phrase that I can interpret. It doesn't randomly generate content, it sparks my own creativity and helps me make decisions. The very first thing I did after sitting down for session 1 was use this to decide on an inciting incident. We'd already decided on our starting city, so I rolled 4d6 in my Bookspark table, essentially asking the question, what do we need to do here? And the answer was, acquire valuable earth. Well, we'd already established in our world building that Magitech is powered by meteorite fragments, so I had a chaotic magic meteorite smash into our starting city, and my player had to retrieve it while helping affected citizens on the way. Location: ruined city buildings. Thing to do: retrieve the meteorite. So, your players will ask you questions in your game. Is there a tree near the manor house windows, for example? You don't know. You haven't prepped. And this is where an oracle comes in. And you don't need to buy a book for this either. Here's what you can do instead. Ask yourself, or even your player, how likely do you think that is from 0 to 100%? You get a number, say 75%, then you roll a d100. If the result is 75 or lower, the answer is yes. If it's higher, the answer is no. An alternate way to handle this is if your game uses some kind of meta-currency like hero points or inspiration. Your player can spend a point to get a desirable answer to the question. You can even do both. Roll first, then give the player the option to overrule the dice. And you can do this kind of thing to answer your own questions too. But what if the question is more complex? Like, what do we find in the Duke's paperwork? You don't know. You haven't prepped. But there are a couple of approaches you can take here. You can use your Spark table as an oracle to generate a phrase that answers the question. Alternatively, you can actually convert it to a yes-no question by asking the player what they expected to find, and then do the same thing as before, test their theories until one turns out to be true. Some players might feel more involved in the story that way, others might prefer to take a less creatively active role. Hopefully you're seeing a pattern at this stage. We're not just randomly generating content, we're using random elements to make decisions on the fly. Random content generators are great, but if you're on the spot at the table, it's so much quicker and can be more uniquely yours if you have oracles and Spark tables ready to go in any situation. Next, something a bit new to this channel, but surprisingly relevant in this case, a very short ad. To add music and ambience without any prep at all, I tested out the totally free version of TableTone. Here it is. I started with a tavern location and relaxed mood for an urban feel. I turned down the sound of merriment, letting the music do the work. For the travel section, I changed to the forest location and in a tense stealth scene seamlessly switched the mood to suspense. No prep, no extra work, but you can make your own custom scenes and presets if you want. I reckon there's easily enough content on the free version for a short fantasy campaign like mine, and if you want to dig into all the customization options and build a unique palette of sounds, there's a 2-week free trial too. So use the link in the description and get TableTone for free. Whenever I GM, I'm usually thinking about the player's goals versus the obstacles I can put in the way. The way you manage tension in the story is so important to a memorable experience. And if this was a normal GMing guide, I'd talk about all the ways you can spend ages planning that stuff out. Or you can use tracks. Tracks are such a simple and effective tool for managing any kind of story progression, from epic quests to little teamwork plans, from exploring dungeons to building relationships. Here's how it works. When the players want to accomplish a goal that's more complex than a single check, quickly decide on a rough number of steps that task might need. You don't need to be accurate here. If in doubt, just pick 4. And then draw that many circles. If there are forces working against them, draw the same number of circles underneath. Any time that the players do something towards that goal that requires a check, if they succeed, mark off a circle. If they fail, mark a circle from the counter track, if there is one. Instead of tracks, Daggerheart uses countdowns for this purpose, which is a very similar thing, except that it suggests tracking the countdown with a d20, and doesn't have general rules for when you tick down. You might have also heard of clocks that do a similar thing, popularized in Blades in the Dark. Personally, I find it more intuitive to count up rather than down, and nearly always add tracks to a game if it doesn't already have a similar mechanic. When my player had to retrieve the meteorite fragment, I just gave that goal a 4-section track and let her work towards it. I had a counter track for our hero's rival meteorite collectors, so whenever my player failed a roll, their track advanced. I used Daggerheart's fear mechanic to add in extra obstacles, like a child trapped in a destroyed building. Now she could help the child but risk failing to find the meteorite first. You can, of course, combine tracks and Spark tables to manage things like travel and discovery, but there is another little secret I wanted to talk about that really makes the players feel like they're discovering something. Cards. A little secret in the solo world is that you can actually use old TCG decks or any cards with an image on them to generate content. And a really cool way to give a sense of travel and discovery is to shuffle and lay down a card to represent each leg of the journey, and then turn each one over to find what you discover there. TCG cards usually have pictures of locations or characters or monsters, and you can build your own travel deck with a mixture of those. But you might not have some of these lying around, and I don't want to suggest that you buy this sort of thing when there are various other cheaper options with more functionality. For example, I picked up this solo role-playing card deck from Raven's Ridge Emporium at UKG while we're in the middle of our game. It has oracle question answers, NPC names, a load of spark words around the edges, D6 results, and an icon in the middle. On our journey, the first leg I turned over was this card with a cat icon. My eye landed on the word cage, so for this leg, I had my player meet a magical creature smuggler with a sad-looking cat-like monster in a cage, and gave her the opportunity to gain a companion. The second leg had an image of a crown and the word flower. I imagined a vast field of golden top plants like sunflowers or something, and had my player make a navigation check without being able to see what was ahead. Combat always took the most time for me to prep when I played D&D. I wanted big, memorable set pieces with environmental effects and iconic enemies. What I discovered after branching out from D&D is that other games manage to do this without building and balancing every encounter. Daggerheart has environmental stat blocks, for example, which can be useful for prepping dynamic encounters, but I wanted 0 prep. Now, one thing you can do in turn-based games is give the environment a turn each round, so that it develops and changes every time. It could be that the water level rises, the crowd panics and stampedes, the curtains catch fire, something like that. Daggerheart doesn't really have turn-based encounters in quite the same way that most traditional games do, but I still used that idea. I would spend a fair point to spotlight the environment. Like in the very first scene, I had the meteorite's wild magic nullifying gravity, which led to a really cool sequence involving a grappling hook. Also, in a lot of trad games, you're probably going to need creature stat blocks to run combat, and you don't want to prepare that ahead of time. If you've got one of these beautifully illustrated bestiaries with loads of lore for every entry, that sounds wonderful for preppers. Ignore it. Grab the stat block of basically the first creature you see that has some kind of similarity with whatever you described. It could be that this one has a hand crossbow. That's basically like a Magitech pistol, right? And you'll find the other abilities might inspire you. They can cast Fireball. Okay, that's a meteorite shard grenade now. I used to meticulously prepare my NPCs. I would practice key phrases to get their voice right, plan their introduction, make sure they had at least 2 iconic, memorable elements and some kind of mystery surrounding them. They were a big part of the game for me. So this was perhaps the most difficult thing for me to figure out how to do without relying on either prep or improv skills, because really, role-playing is a kind of improv. But then I realised there's a technique I've been using the whole time. Theft. 2 of the first NPCs I introduced were secret library police trying to get the meteorite from the player. They wore blue suits and shades and walked and spoke with an arrogant swagger. The shorter one did the talking while the larger one stood there menacingly, and they became memorable villains. They were basically the Turks from Final Fantasy VII. I remembered how they acted in the game and just did that. There are NPC emulators available, but they might slow down a conversation, and honestly, this was the easiest technique I found. If you have a wide enough appreciation for speculative fiction, you'll have a character archetype ready to go for any occasion. I've taken ideas from old adventure stories like Moonfleet and Treasure Island, from modern video games and TV. There's even a character in my Midnight Muscadine's actual play who has the same name as the character they're inspired by from one of my favourite modern fantasy novels. No one's going to call you out for your inspirations, and if they notice, they'll actually appreciate it. And again, I'm hoping you'll notice that theme again here, that you don't have to randomize everything. You can still tell a crafted story while also not being prepared. Because if this video is about anything, it's about my hope that burned out GMs can find the joy in their storytelling without the pressure, not feeling like they need to perform or spend more time prepping than playing. And even if you enjoy prepping or improvising or both, maybe having these techniques to fall back on will be helpful too. Talking of theft, I want to mention some of the games that taught me these ideas in case you're inspired to look further afield. I mentioned Fabula Ultima before with its process for collaborative world building, but more generally, this game really helped me let go of control and let players take more creative load by giving them this gamified tool to shape the fiction in the form of Fabula points. Ironsworn Starforged taught me probably the easiest weighted oracle system, the way of rolling under or over the probability with a D100 to get an answer. It was inspired by the Mythic GM emulator that does a similar but somewhat more complicated thing. Other oracles might use a system inspired by Freeform Universal's core resolution mechanic, where a 1 is a no and, a 2 is a no, a 3 is a no but, and so on. Honestly, owning just one of these books can open up this whole world of zero prep and GM-less play. The Wild Sea taught me that tracks can be used for absolutely anything. Health, gear, quests, travel, anything. It's a relatively heavily modified Forged in the Dark system, and so its tracks are inspired by the countdown clocks in Blades in the Dark. A lot of Forged in the Dark and adjacent games are really good for zero prep play. I'm really looking forward to playing Cyber plus Punk for that exact reason. Using cards for travel is an idea I got from two places. First, the Carter system is a popular solo framework where you lay out a grid of cards face down, and when you move to a new area, you turn it face up for a prompt. That generally involves regular playing cards though. Mappa Mundi used a similar idea, but with images, where as you travel to your next waypoint, you unveil your next location or encounter. And these games just scratch the surface of what's available when you do want to dive into the world of indie games, but for the time being, I really hope some of these ideas can relieve some of that pressure that trad games put on GMs, and make zero prep sound less like a myth and more like something you can actually do. If any of this was helpful, please do all the liking and subscribing and stuff. And of course, a huge thank you to all the people who support what I do here and are voting on the next audience pick review right now. If you're eager and able to support the channel, please head over to Ko-fi or patreon.com/cozyrpgreviews. And until next time, happy adventures.